Welcome to episode 208 of the Necronama.com. Throughout the month of October, author and editor Alex Woodroe is joining us as we take a deep dive into Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities. Today's episode, The Autopsy. All right, so we're back for the third episode, The Autopsy. Everybody's favorite, apparently. Everyone told me I would just adore this episode, and I liked it a lot, but still not my favorite. I've only seen 4 at this point as we're recording, and right now The Outside is still my favorite, so I can't wait for the next episode, but we'll see if that holds up when I finish the whole series.
I cannot wait to see which one ends up being your favorite. Like, I am so excited to find out. I've got bets running on this, but I'm not telling you.
It's my ongoing thing to keep listeners interested. They're so obsessed with knowing which one will be my favorite. No one gives a shit except me, probably. But no, I legitimately wanted to know. You guys have. I know, Alex, you finished the series. Don, have you finished the series at this point?
If I did it when it first came out because. It's been a while since a while. I think it's only been out a year, but I watched it when it first came out, but then like so much has happened since then. I can't remember if I watched all of them or not.
No, that's cool. What is your favorite at this point?
Oh, gosh. Why would you ask me that?
Because that's the topic of the conversation.
Well, I think probably. It would honestly be this one or Graveyard Rats. The Outside, there's a lot to talk about. Mm-hmm. But I think with the Autopsy and more so Autopsy than Graveyard Rats, you have this moment where you're like, this is going in a completely different direction. Mm-hmm. Whereas with Graveyard Rats, you always felt like, oh, this is going to go underground. We're going to see some stuff that's kind of been foreshadowed. But with the Autopsy, even after I watched it the second time, there was some interesting wordplay, and the same thing with the Outside. There was a lot of wordplay in that one, where you go back and you watch and you're like, okay, well, this made sense now.
And what about you, Alex? You've seen all of them, so
I did see it when it first came out. So there are some bits I may not perfectly remember. Like, I cannot wait to watch the last one again, The Murmuring, because I feel like the first time around I must have missed a lot of what was going on in that one. But just now, off the top of my head, I think my favorite is number 7, The Viewing, the Panos Cosmatos episode. Nice. Which is completely counter to what everybody would have guessed, because it's so not my style, but for some reason I just sunk into that one. And definitely, I think The Outside, I know that all of my friends say that their favorite is The Autopsy, the one we're doing today, which is fascinating. And so rewatching it now, I was looking for the reasons why. I was trying to perform an autopsy on the episode and figure out what's going on inside it to understand why this is everybody's favorite episode. And it is super cool. Like, it does some really interesting tricks.
Yeah,
I have to admit.
No, I had a very similar thing. Almost all of my friends say this is their favorite episode. My friend Ian is the only one who picked something different, and he picked The Viewing, and that does not come as a surprise to me at all, because that's very much up his alley. So I also went into this, and I knew, I read spoilers for things. I know where all the episodes are going and all that stuff, but for me, like, this it didn't hit the thing that I love about anthologies. Like, it's a really good horror story. It's an excellent horror story. I think it would make an amazing movie. I think it's so good. But when I think anthologies, I think that creep show EC comics feel, and this just didn't have the humor for me, and it didn't have the, just the weird little, like, too much here and there.
It is the one of them that could definitely be a full-length movie. Absolutely. It's probably the most, like, serious and classic horror story out of the whole bunch in terms of, that sort of big budget movie likability. and the characters and all of that. So yeah, I totally get where you're coming from. It is definitely different. It stands out from the rest.
Yeah, I think it just I think if it was anything else, I would adore it and it would be my favorite. But because I'm still searching for that creep show vibe, I was like, that's really good. But but yeah, I wanted to know if you guys had feelings on why everyone loves this so much. And I think we kind of hit it, that it is very horror. It's very it's a really strong story. And
it is. And the character, I think, is probably the most likable one that we've had so far, and possibly the most likable one that we're going to have ever. But just before we go on, if you don't mind, can I give a little bit of admin on this?
You can do anything.
Since we're talking about the autopsy, I just wanted to mention this episode was directed by David Pryor, who is a screenwriter, producer, editor. He worked on The Empty Man, and the teleplay is by David S. Goyer, and it's based on a short story by Michael Shea. So that's the important little bits of admin that I love pointing out about this, because since, I said that in the first episode, and I'm probably going to say it every episode, since this is an anthology and we need more of these. It's one of the few opportunities that we have to highlight the people behind each episode and to have people fall in love with each episode and with new directors. So yeah, I thought it's very cool to see what everybody else was working on and what else they've done.
Yeah, I love that so many of these are based on stories we can go read. Like, I'm definitely going to read the story for the autopsy because I love the script so much. I'm going to go find this and read it. Hopefully I'll have it in the show notes if it's available online, or at least somewhere to buy it or whatever. And I've been doing that with each one as I can. I did not do it with this one, but I did it with The Outside. There's a comic for it, and I read that. And I did it with Graveyard Rats. And it's been such a cool thing because you can kind of dive in and go look at this other medium with it as well, and see how the story has been told somewhere else, or especially I know we'll get into it with The Outsider, but I'm just going to throw it in really fast. The comic is very different than the story that we got. And I feel like this made that comic stronger. And so I'm kind of fascinated, will this affect how I read this short story or things like that? I'm always a big fan of getting the two mediums and seeing how they make each other stronger.
Yeah, me too. I think that's a huge advantage when you're one of those people who doesn't care about spoilers, who is unspoilable, because it means we get to enjoy it in multiple mediums, and it literally doesn't matter to me that I've already seen one or the other. So that's super fun.
Absolutely. All right, let's dive in. Alex, where do you want to go with this episode?
Oh gosh, where do we begin? Well, first of all, I love that this actually is kind of a slow starter. You don't get to have many of those anymore in stories, in books, especially in short stories or in short films. You don't get to have a deliberate, slow intro, right? It'll happen a lot of times that we're going to have an intro that's trying a lot of things and not managing anything. So it will feel like it's dragging. It will feel like nothing's happening. But I'm talking about an introduction like this one, where it just takes its time deliberately and skillfully. And, you don't even know what this is actually going to be about until basically halfway through the episode, which is fascinating. Like, it goes counter to all of the advice that we give, young storytellers today. And I really love that. I so love a nice, slow, deliberate intro.
And the thing that I like about it, with that intro, is you still feel like you're getting the intro that we tell writers to write, even though that's not where the story is going. Yeah. And that's just how strong this script is.
Yeah. It is like 3 different stories wrapped up into one package, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
And when I think about the main story of it, I definitely think about the latter part, like the actual autopsy itself. And all of this stuff at the front is kind of just preparing the road for that.
Well, and it's fascinating because you do get the mine explosion, and then you find out why it happened, or how it happened, I should say. Yeah. And then later, way later, you find out why it happened.
Yeah.
And I thought that was just such good, just layering. to like just keep kind of twisting it each time. Like you think you know something, but now you get this extra piece of info and it's so much better. I love that kind of writing.
It is skillful and it's complex because if you only have a really short time, like if you're writing a short story and you've only got 5 pages to say something, normally the advice would be don't skip back and forth in time a lot. Don't have a bunch of characters. Keep it simple. Keep it to one scene. Keep it to one location. Keep it minimal. So you can tell a lot in that one scene and one location. And this does exactly the opposite. Like from the very beginning, it's jumping all over the place. There are so many people in the cast. I thought that was a super brave choice. And it works.
And it's something I would normally feel like I would dislike. Like if you explained it to me, I'd be like, flashbacks on flashbacks on this and that. Those. Like, and then this is just like beautiful and the absolute exception to the rule.
There are so many characters whose names you don't even fully know all the time. And you're not even sure who is who. In theory, I should hate it. And I didn't.
That's great. But it is funny how that goes directly into the writing advice, because there is a reason that everybody's told, hey, get in and get out and, hit us with action and impress us on page 1 or 2 and do this and do this. When you can get something like this that does the opposite, it does it in a skillful way. Yeah. And there's a reason that it's okay that it's the exception. Yeah. But we don't want 10,000 stories trying to do this and failing,
Absolutely. No, because it's deliberate. That's what makes a difference for me. It's not something that's starting in a different place or being more chaotic with the timeline accidentally because that's what happened to come to the writer. It's deliberate, and you can tell that. That makes a big difference, I think.
And I know, James, you talked about the whole aspect of get us in and get us started. And I like that this starts with confusion and chaos because it's coal mining, it's a very dirty job. I mean, physically demanding. And it's already a chaotic situation because you're talking about putting people in a subterranean environment, very little light, very little resources in some cases for survival down there. And if there's a collapse, you're screwed. I mean, I've seen a good number of these, I'm not firsthand, but I mean, as far as on the news and of these cave-ins that take place within mining, and the way in which, in a lot of cases, like when you have F. Murray Abraham's character showing up, there's a way that a business is going to try and figure out a way that they're going to ensure that your family is not compensated to where it's like, hey, it's your fault or somebody else. We don't have to pay for this shit.
Yeah.
And I love how at least his understanding, this character's understanding is, I've got a job to do, but I'm going to help you out. Speaking to the sheriff, like, I'm going to help you out. I've got this recording, this audio recording I'm going to provide for you, but I'm going to have this official report that's for, the insurance for the company to, compensate these people because his thing is he's going in there to do his job.
Yep.
If there is something weird out there, from the conversation that he has with the sheriff, that's for somebody else to figure out. But, the idea of him being involved to the point where this traveler wants his body so he can now continue on, because the issue was that they were perfectly fine as long as they weren't discovered.
Yeah. But
having people know that they're there really screws things up. But I just love the overall tone of this story, the lighting to go along with it, because from what I remember, there are no bright moments in this movie other than like the flashbacks, because everything that's current, it's dark, it's dreary, it's unsettling, almost as if your lights are about to be turned out as well.
Technically, the whole present moment story, so the actual autopsy, happens during the span of exactly one night. So yeah, it is all super dark and dreary and very quiet. Had you noticed that? I think the sound design on this episode is one of my favorites, for sure, out of the series, but like one of my favorites in general, because for the most part, it's so quiet. There's no like exaggerated horror soundtrack. There's no theremin. There's no choruses of violins. There's none of that stuff that we're used to. The big dramatic cello moments. It's so very quiet when he's just there taking his, notes and dictating. And I found that so beautiful. And then when they do choose to have music on that whole scene, it is the most unsettling choice of songs. Like they are all so contrasting with what's going on there with the dark. And I mean, all of those cheerful, retro songs that he plays for himself. I don't know. I just found them super unsettling, and I love that.
No, I agree. And it's one of my big complaints with horror, actually, is that we constantly put mood music with stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And I view it so much like canned laughter on sitcoms. I'm like, if I don't know where the joke is, then you did a shitty job. I shouldn't need somebody to tell me where to laugh. And I feel the same way with horror. There are times that music works really well with it, like Poltergeist is a great example, or things like that. And then there's times like this where the silence is such a character of itself. And it's so much of the atmosphere and making you identify with this character because he's not hearing anything.
It's a very intimate scene between us and what's his name? Carl. Between us and Carl, it's like it creates this real intimacy, and that's probably one of the many reasons why we're so fond of him.
Well, and even like I know we're going to get to it, but the part where the voice says "run" and it's obviously him. Like the silence to me is such a big piece of that. It's a loud siren going off that there's this red flag without an actual loud siren. But like the silence and the lack of music, if we had something telling us, oh, get anxious, get scared now, I think it would really ruin it,
Probably. Okay, but hang on. Before we get to the voice part, because I definitely have a question for you guys that relates specifically to that moment. But before we get there, I want to cover some of the earlier ground. I thought one of my favorite early moments is when Nate and Carl are still talking about this, before we even get the story of what happened. And Nate says that he thinks he's cursed, right? That's how he starts the story. He thinks he's cursed, whether he means that literally or not. And Carl says this thing that I found so wonderful and such a relief to me. And I think that's when I fell in love with Carl as a character. He said, from the bottom of my heart, you are not that special. That's just ego talking. And you are not, I'm of course paraphrasing, but you're not that special that, God himself took time to curse you for any reason. You're just a normal, average person. And if you're cursed, all of us are equally cursed. And because I think this relates very much to my own life philosophy, and I found it to be that sort of relief that I get because I'm kind of a nihilist. I say this to everybody and they're picturing probably the wrong thing, but I'm kind of a nihilist in the sense that I find it refreshing to be reminded that we are not that important and that it doesn't actually matter and we are not the center of the universe and, all of this will be gone someday. So having a character in a horror movie just go, listen, you are not that important. It was such a breath of relief, even though I knew bad stuff was about to happen. And it instantly made me feel like this guy's my friend. This is a good guy and he's my friend and I can trust him. And I think that's when I started to realize that probably the reason why everybody loves this episode is because of Carl.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense to me. Everybody talks about him all the time when they bring up this episode. I do think he's a big part, but I think you also hit something earlier that he's the nicest one. So many anthologies are about you fucked up, you have to be punished.
Yeah.
Right.
Or you're given the chance to get out and you spit in its face. So now you have to be punished.
Yeah.
And he gets the direct opposite, really, that he is, this rolls into you're just a person. He's just the next person, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if he's good or bad. It doesn't matter what actions he's taken before this. He just is where he is.
if you think about it, Carl is probably the nicest and kindest person on several levels, right? He's doing this job when he probably shouldn't be and doesn't need to. He's going to die in 6 months. He has 6 months left to live, right? There is no reason why he has to be performing autopsies in the dead of night. To some extent, he's there because he wants to help his friend, because he wants to keep doing something good, because he wants to. You know, he could be retired and on a beach somewhere right now. He shows kindness, right, and consideration when he doesn't have to, when nobody sees him. So when he starts working on these bodies, I think to the first one, does the first cut and says, I apologize for the indignity. Right? He doesn't need to do that. Nobody's there. Nobody's listening. He is just a kind person, even when he really doesn't need to be one in any way. So I think he really is like, if you really look at him, he's the epitome of probably the best people that there could possibly be in a horror movie.
Absolutely. But it's fascinating that you brought up that he doesn't have to do this. And I'm thinking like just any jobs, right? There's always the like, oh, I want to keep working or this is what I love. And I'm like, of all the jobs in the world that you don't have to keep doing, like you're not coming back because you miss the smell, you know, like. So he definitely does not have to, but maybe it does roll into the just taking care of his friend while also maybe it's the mystery of what really happened down here or whatever, you know.
Taking care of those families, because maybe he believes that somebody else is not going to do as thorough a job, and he wants to be sure that if there's a way for those families to get paid, he's going to be there to provide that way.
I love that.
Like there's no bad way to interpret his choice to be there and the way he behaves. There's literally no way. It's quite impressive.
He's not there for the money.
Yeah. No, I doubt that this is making anybody rich as a career. I sincerely doubt that.
Yeah, because even when he has that moment where he's talking about, you know, in service versus while employed or while in service, you know, the way that he plays with the word, the legalese there, right? Yeah. It's pointing out what you said, Alex, where it's about him making sure that one, the job is done and done correctly, and two, to where it is done in favor of those families. Because he doesn't strike you as like, oh, I'm the slimy insurance. I'm nothing against. I'm just saying the stereotype, the generalization. Yeah. I'm not the slimy insurance adjuster that you hear about from TV attorneys, right? I'm the guy who's going to come here and do my job and do it to the best ability I can to ensure that you get the best outcome. Yeah. Because I even wrote down, I said, you know, when they're talking about workman's comp, you're also discussing the idea of exploitative capitalism. You know, the idea of you're in service to this company and the fact that you died while working there, they may or may not cover you. Yep. Or the fact that, you know, these guys are all replaceable, and then you pair that up with the traveler, right? It's the same thing. These human bodies are expendable.
You're right. It is exactly the same thing.
So yeah, I'm gonna use you up. I'm gonna eat you up, because like even when he describes like how he's doing, it's like, oh, you know, he's still alive in this body, or Eddie's still alive in. I'm sorry, Joe Allen. Joe Allen is still alive in this body. And I can taste it. Oh, I can smell your cancer. It's going to be so delicious, blah, blah, blah. And so this idea of he is a parasite, it's not just that he's an alien. He's a parasite. Yeah. And the only way to stop a parasite is, I mean, in some cases, is to kill the host. Yeah. So, I mean, just the understanding that he has of like, I don't have anybody. Everybody, I've made my amends. You know, I've gotten my affairs in order. Like I've even had this conversation with Nate. Like, it's like, oh, don't worry about it. You know, shit, I'm going to die. Who cares? Yep. But he cares enough where he's like, I'm going to make sure that you get the truth out of this one way or another. Yeah. So just him record. Just the idea of him recording this as a separate line. Like I'm stuck on that. But the idea of him recording this as a secondary source of information just for his friend to have closure, not for the families, because the family's going to get the closure through the insurance settlement of the workman's comp, right? Yeah, but the idea that that his friend who has he really doesn't need to know anything about it other than it was an accident or it wasn't an accident in the general sense of what took place. But the fact that his friend is so concerned about what they found and then what happened after they found it, he's like, no, I'm gonna give you an answer.
Yeah. I'm going to go the extra mile. Well, like, do you realize you are basically elevating this guy to the rank of folk hero at this point? And the more I think about it, the more I think, that's what the writers wanted us to be doing. Like, we are playing right into their hands. This is totally correct. He is a folk hero in this story.
Especially with that part of the country, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I say that because of the labor and the way in which coal miners are respected by the working class and so disrespected by the owner class, the capital class, to where, I mean, just looking at this as far as like all the different ways in which, when I say, criticism of capitalism, all the different ways in which people will use capitalism to exploit other people for their own gain. Because, I mean, even with this, I didn't see like a moment where, the guy who heads up the company or manager or anything like that is like, hey, we want to talk to the families, let you know we're, all the kind of canned stuff like, oh, we're praying for you. We're going to find out what happened, blah, blah. Because it doesn't even give you that moment of like the company cared that much. Because I've seen a number of pieces of news coverage about miners that have been caved in, and whoever owns the plant or manages the plant, there's always this one moment where they come up in front of the cameras and say, hey, we're thinking about the families and we're going to do this. And then you never see them again. We what was it like the train derailment a few months ago where the guy who owned the company or was head of the company or whatever took a little while, showed up, then said whatever he was going to say, and then he disappeared. And for the most part, we've outside of that area, we've all forgotten about it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sitting here and I had to think which derailment you were even talking about, because we had multiple ones for a while with the, supposed chemicals, and I don't know enough about any of that to really make fun of it, but like, it was like constant. We had so many. So I literally had to stop and think, which one is he talking
Which one?
about?
Yeah, which catastrophe, which calamity are we talking about?
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, you're right.
It is the United States. But
pick your tragedy. Which one are we going to have today?
I should not be laughing. You're turning me into a terrible person.
We have that effect on people.
A really neat trick, I gotta say, that they pulled off, however, is that at no point did I get the feeling that he was going to or would be willing to like outright lie or hide anything. Like I don't know if this is just me reaching, but I had the feeling that if he did end up finding proof that would mean that the families cannot be, compensated, I don't think he would outright lie about it. Or I just had this feeling that whatever he finds, he would give it to the sheriff and trust the sheriff to do what was best. But also at the same time that he sort of understands that kind of proof is never completely like black or white. It's either yes or no. Nothing is ever that simple. And within the realm of telling the truth, there are still ways to interpret the proof that you see. It's like just like the company was saying, they didn't say that they had proof that there was a bombing. It was something more roundabout, like there was some sort of circumstantial sort of evidence that might indicate that it could potentially have been a bombing, right? Which is, if that's all you're going on, then it could just as easily be interpreted the other way, that it, there's evidence that it might not have been a bombing. So I thought that was a really interesting trait too, because it just makes him be an even more honest and likable person. That he didn't show up there with any sort of planted evidence in his bag, and he didn't roll up there ready to screw anybody over. He just rolled up there to do his best.
And he didn't come in with an agenda. He hadn't already made up his mind or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly.
My only question with that goes back to the recording versus the official report. Because he could write a report that would help the families while still telling his friend the truth. But I do feel the way he's presented, that he's more of the analytical scientist who's just there to find out the facts.
Yeah.
So I do agree with you, as much as there's part of me that hopes that if he found something, he would help the families.
I feel like for me, the difference between the recording and the writing is because if you're doing something live, then there's no telling what's going to fly out of your mouth in the moment that could then easily be used later and interpreted by a company who wants to interpret it in a certain way that you never necessarily intended, that, in the cold light of day, you wouldn't have said it in that specific way. So I totally get why if he was doing a voice recording, he wouldn't want that to be the official thing that he presents to anybody. Because, the corpse jumps and you're going to start cursing. That's stuff that happens while you're giving autopsies. That's super normal.
Absolutely.
Happens all the time.
Totally. I love that. Now, I do feel like you've really helped me understand what everybody loves about this episode, because I had not really put a lot of...
It's him, isn't it?
It's 100% him, yeah, but I hadn't really put a lot of understanding into how much it matters that he's a good guy when we're not used to that in this situation.
Yeah, it is absolutely startling to see this kind of character in this kind of story. And
yet I was just going to say, he's not presented in an annoying way. It's not jammed down your throat that he's perfect in every way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
He's just a guy trying his best. And somehow that's the most endearing thing that anybody can possibly be.
Plus, there's not this moment where it's him begging for his life, which would have, or explaining why he should survive, right? Which you would get in something like this, where you have this callback to, his daughter that he just had an argument with, or, all these things of unresolved issues, because it seems as though he's already resolved any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Like I said, as far as he's already gotten his affairs in order.
Yeah.
By the time he's having that conversation with Nate, 6 months, whatever,
Yeah.
And even with the idea that Alex, you brought up about working in James as well, you sometimes have those people that are in terminal situations and they just need something to do, or else they're going to just continuously think about whatever it is. But when the traveler, or at least when he's preparing for the traveler to enter, he deafens himself by damaging his ears. He then of course stabs his eyes. He cuts his throat. One, so he can't speak, and then two, so he'll also bleed out. And again, it's not a thing of like, oh, I'm gonna survive this so I can defeat you. It's like, no, I'm gonna damage the host so you can't thrive, so you can't go anywhere. You die here with me. Which again is another, pardon the term, a self-sacrifice that you see in this guy, where it's obvious that there are things that are much bigger than him, whether we want to look at it as, I'm one of 8 billion, I guess now. I'm one of 8 billion people on Earth, right? Yeah. My problems don't really matter when we start talking about the remaining people. But then you throw in, this is somebody who came from another planet, another universe, another dimension, whatever it is. Then you realize how insignificant so many things are in your life, but how significant it would be for him to prevent this thing from taking hold.
Absolutely.
No matter where you fit in the universe and how small you may be, how small your problems may be, you may make a decision that affects so many others.
Yeah. And I feel like in some way that's where the terminal illness comes in too, because we know for a fact that he has 6 months left to live, which one thing, it makes him super consistent. Like from the first moment he talks about that and he's like at peace and he's like, yeah, that's going to happen. Don't even worry about it. And he stays that consistent throughout, because when the end comes around, he continues to have that attitude of focusing on the job at hand and not worrying about any of the rest of it. Like he has this super narrow focus the entire time, which is really wonderful to see. And then on the other hand, I think it does something for the viewer too, to know that, because I feel like it would be different if we saw the same story and the main character going through all of this was, I don't know, a young father of 2 children with another 40 years left to live, right? I'm not saying it would be a better story. I'm just saying it would feel different. There's something about him that allows us to go on this journey with him and to believe that he really is okay with this. So that by the time he gets to the end, I don't think any of us are mourning. I think we're all cheering, right? Whereas for other good characters that we love, we might be mourning at that point. And with him, it's just like it's a stadium over here in the audience, and we're all cheering him on and shouting and screaming and stomping in joy because he's doing something that amazing. And I thought that was a really interesting sort of distinction and a really interesting characteristic that the writers played with to get us to have that sort of cathartic reaction with him.
Well, and I think that rolls back into the "you're not that special." He accomplishes this amazing thing that one person would have to do, no matter who it is. So they'd have to be the special one, right? But he's not chosen. He's not. He doesn't have special things that are going to help him with it, or superpowers, or anything. He's just a person who does the right thing. And I think that rolls into the "you're not special" in such a cool way, because what is special? You know,
Right.
I love that.
Yeah, I think this sort of nihilistic theme, in my interpretation of nihilism, sort of goes all the way to the end, because again, it's the fact that he only has 6 months left to live that makes all of this easier to go through for us, to go through with him, and to understand sort of what he's going through in that moment and why he's so collected about it. And it does make you think of, okay, if the fact that it's finite is what makes it easier and makes it feel like the task is more important than the consequences, then isn't that something we should always be remembering, that all of our lives are finite? I don't know. Am I just being super maudlin right now? Sorry, guys.
No. I was actually thinking that exact same thing, because when you say you have 6 months, he doesn't have a date. He doesn't know, oh, it's June 4th, baby. You know, like
more or less.
It could be tomorrow. It could be 6 years from now. But no matter how it is, let's say he lives another 25 years. If he lives every day the way that he's living it, once he's accepted it, holy shit, what a life, man. Right. Like, I wish that I could get there. I was whining before we came on air about things that are going on in my life that are so fucking inconsequential. And it's just like, just having that mindset of always understanding that every one of us has enter numbered days here, you know. We don't know how many days, but we do have an expiration date coming up. And if we did learn to live that way, what lives we would have, you know? Wow.
If you think about it, the only real difference between him and us is that he knows with a little more certainty than we do. A little bit. That's it.
Yeah.
That is literally the only difference. And I'm not nearly as badass as he is, not even by a long shot.
I wouldn't be a badass at all. I would just break down and cry. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just thinking, I'm back into my Final Destination mindset, where it's like, I'm gonna step out on a curb and get hit by a bus. Which
something more creative than that. No.
Well, I mean, but I mean, Alex, you point out that probably the strongest thing about this is the fact that, as well as James, the fact that he knows, but he's known prior to showing up, and the fact that you can have two options. I mean, I'm sure he already went through his 5 stages, but you have this moment of clarity where it's kind of like, all this other shit doesn't matter. You know what? As far as outside of what I need to do. And it may be his job, it may be gardening, it may be reconnecting with people. But I don't know. I think it fully becomes clear to him, or at least clear to me as an audience member, when he starts having that interaction with the traveler and explaining like his existence in life, and even the comparison between the two, and the fact that he calls him, his character calls the traveler a thief, which, I mean, it was interesting the way, as far as the way that he does this, it's like, this thing is telling him what he's going to do. He's like, oh, you're a thief.
Yeah.
There's nothing. Basically the same thing, but flipped when he has that conversation about, you're not that special.
Yeah. Yeah.
The same thing here.
It's
Fuck
true,
you,
it's
alien. You're
true.
just a thief. You're not that special.
It's
Like you're
absolutely,
doing.
that is true.
I mean, I love the way he has these conversations with other people that you start to see how it relates, or you see the way in which that conversation comes back with other characters and other people he interacts with.
Yeah, that's a brilliant connection. That's so beautiful. The more we talk about this and the more I think about this, the more I realize that this is the kind of writing that makes me want to quit writing. Like, I wasn't mad at this episode before, but now the more I actually look at it in detail, I'm getting pissed off because you are not allowed to be this good. Can
you
you
don't
please
get to
stop?
be our favorite episode now.
No, it's just the writers. Can you please just stop and leave some for the rest of us? Because this is just reaching unfair levels of not okay. But yeah, in the perspective of the fact that he does know he has a limited time to live, one of the things that I found super interesting and probably accurate is that he does still have that sort of survival instinct, that voice that felt something wrong and told him, get out, run, get out, I think it says. That's a really gorgeous moment in this episode. I loved it so much. And it's so chilling and so beautifully done. And again, one of those really, really quiet moments, right? And he doesn't listen to that voice, which fair enough, but he does have it. And my question to the both of you is as follows. Have you ever gotten that sort of voice? Obviously it's not necessarily an actual voice for everybody. I know some of us hear sentences, but some of us don't. But as in that sort of feeling that you don't necessarily already consciously have connected the dots, but there's something in your head telling you, you are in danger, you fucked up, you shouldn't be here, get out of this situation now.
I had it yesterday, but I want to hear Don's answer first.
Oh, no. The airwaves are not safe for my answer.
Oh, goodness.
I will just say that if you know me, that voice hit me in November of 2012.
Oh, man.
I want to hear this story later.
Yeah, that voice hit me around November of 2012, and it was just like, dude, you need to get the fuck out of here. You need to go. Okay. You need to go. And then I went to a courthouse and got some paperwork done. So anyway,
I think I can see where this is going. Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
In a more serious tone, there have been some moments where I've been places. I've had this conversation with James before where I think even like a restaurant we went to, I was like, James, what the fuck, man? Something's weird here. So I sat.
I never should have taken you to AUTOPSY. I'm sorry.
Oh my God, or Kingdom. No, it's just you have those moments where if you're more susceptible to something, not necessarily PTSD triggering it, which it can. I'm sorry, being triggered by it, but the idea that you're in a situation that you're not 100% comfortable in, nothing about it seems right, and you try to leave that situation as quickly as possible. And sometimes, I mean, you have intuition that's going to save your life, because I love when they had this intuition with Dr. Winters, or Carl, where the hair on the back of his neck starts standing up. I thought it was such a good visual. I thought it was a good way to display like something here was off, as straight-laced as he was, as the way he presented himself, presented his field, but just for him to be rattled by not the fact that you got a shitload of bodies here, but something about something here is wrong.
Yeah. And I love that because I interpreted like he has lived a life, obviously, clearly. We don't know what it is, but this man has lived a life and he has been through some shit. And his body probably gets that feeling of something's off long before his brain does, which is what happens to me too, definitely. I so much related to that moment.
So this legitimately happened to me yesterday, okay? My wife, my child, and I were going to go shopping. And as I pulled up in the parking lot, I saw this guy just like walking, holding his phone, okay? And then I saw a second dude running, holding his phone. And then this other car just like kicked it in reverse and got out of there. And these two guys kept filming that one. And I was like, I don't know what the fuck's happening, but we are out of here. Right. And that's all pretty obvious. But here's the kicker for you. If I had been alone, I feel like there's a pretty good shot I would have stayed to see what was happening. I got out of there to make sure my wife and kid were safe.
Yeah, it's
and I don't know, like I've just been sitting here since you asked, thinking about that. Like, why would I chance my life to find out what's happening? But I would. And I'm not 100% like, oh, I definitely would. I'm just like, I know it would have been an option when it's not an option when they're with me. And I find that fascinating.
Yeah.
Damn it, Chip.
It's easier. I think it's easier not to question yourself as much, to play it safe and to make good choices when you're responsible for somebody else. And it's easier to end up just questioning yourself and calling yourself, saying you're being silly and paranoid when it's just you by yourself in your own head. Like I'm pretty sure that's very standard, and that's what usually happens.
I'm literally Googling it right now to see if I can find out what happened.
Oh, wow.
Nothing so far, though. So don't get your hopes up. Anyway, yeah. No, I found that interesting that it literally happened to me yesterday and you're asking about it. So.
Yeah, that is interesting.
It's funny that James is trying to come up with an alibi. He's like, I was with my wife and my daughter. I saw something happening, and I tried to get out of that situation.
And now he's just Googling it to find out what happened. He doesn't
making
know
sure the cops are not on my trail.
He's just looking it up as we speak, and he's going to be like, oh no, look at
oh, this is terrible.
This is
so
terrible.
And so that I don't like was anyway.
Gosh darn it.
He's digitally returning to the scene of the crime.
Gosh darn it, there's been some murders. I'm sorry.
It's hilarious.
No, I'm gonna need Alex to record herself saying that and slapping her slapping herself on the knee, where it's like, darn it, there've been some murders.
I am planning on getting a pair of cowboy boots too, if that's going to help the visual.
Beautiful.
This is like my dream. It's one of my bucket list things that I need to own a pair of cowboy boots for some reason. I have no idea why, but
well, when you come out for StokerCon, we know some places. We don't personally shop there, but we know where they are.
Yeah, so you can get boots, buy one, get one free.
There you go.
Now's the perfect time to start, I guess, if you haven't shopped there before. We should get matching cowboy boots.
Look, I'm not saying I wouldn't. Not saying I wouldn't. That's it. I mean, there was no but.
That's the end. Okay, perfect. Sold. I love this moment so much. Sorry.
Really fast, I gotta ask Don this. Don, one time I did a panel and you showed up cosplaying as Cowboy Curtis from Pee-wee's Playhouse. Did you have cowboy boots? Because I don't remember.
I don't think I was wearing cowboy boots.
Huh. I was just curious. Not important.
I mean, I have. Did I wear my boots?
I don't know.
No, I'm trying to think. I think I did bring boots with me.
I was just going to say, if you did, we need a picture so that me and Alex can get matching ones, and then you don't have to spend more money.
I definitely need a picture of this event.
All right. So there are a lot of boot places in San Diego. So you're good to go.
Oh, man. So where are we at with this episode?
I was going to say, how
okay, this is the one thing I don't want to forget, which is the creature design. I don't think either one of you would have forgotten it, but yeah. I know I probably would have forgotten to say anything. But the idea that the creature design, I think, was really good in the sense of it goes away from the anthropomorphic idea of an alien as far as like, oh, well, it's got to have legs and it's got to have arms and it has to have the same emotional understanding as humans, when that's just people creating aliens in their own image, as opposed to, hey, what are some really interesting things out there in nature or something interesting out there in sci-fi that we could turn around and have it as this. Which, looking at the creature design as it was, I immediately thought about when I was explaining to my daughter exactly what human beings are.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, this thing, the body that we have, this is just basically armor. It's a suit that we wear. I said, what makes up a human being is your brain, your eyes, and all that connective tissue, as far as like all the central nervous system. That's what makes you up. Everything else is just to keep that alive.
Yeah.
So, your lungs, your heart, all those other it's just to keep this thing alive. Everything about you is within this, this tissue of the brain and the nerve tissue as well.
Yeah.
And when I thought about the drawing I made for, it was just a brain with, a bunch of nerves hanging out of it and whatever. And so when I rewatched this and the traveler was cutting itself out, which I thought was a really cool thing to add to this. It's not, I'm just going to emerge from the body. I'm going to cut myself out of this body. Oh, and by the way, I have to be careful of the pectoral muscles because then I won't be able to use the arm. But just the way in which it emerges pretty much in the same physical, with the same physical characteristics as if you were to show a brain with its nerve endings.
Yeah.
And it showed like this, all you have to do is take this like a thumb drive or or an SD card. I take it out of this and I put it into you. And now everything.
That's an amazing analogy. You just swapped
It
a
absolutely
USB stick from one body to the other.
But the thing is, it's I just hope that if it is a USB drive, like it understands how to put itself in the body the first time.
Yeah.
And doesn't do the whole thing of like, damn it, Bill, the alien. You've been doing this for thousands of years. One day you'll get on the first try.
Twist himself around, go back in, realize it's still not right, come back out a third time, twist himself around. Yeah.
It's always the third time. I don't know how it happens, but it is. And everyone knows that.
Yes, it is.
Then he just asks the coroner, it's like, hey, can you blow? There might be some dust in this portal. Can you blow on this real quick for me?
I really love the detail of how he still has those last tendrils in the body, because I was looking at that scene thinking this is not going to work logically, because there's a time between bodies when he's not going to be in control of either. And the writers anticipated that, and they were like, no, he's still got tendrils in this one. We're good. Trust me, we've thought about that. Right. And the way that the legs are twitching as he pulls out those last tendrils, that gave me this whole body sensation. That was super wonderful. I really loved that.
Well, I thought that was a great misdirect. Like, I don't know if it was purposeful, but like you're waiting for that time. That's the only time. It has to be between the two bodies. And then they don't do it, and they have a way around it. Yeah. Beautiful.
It is absolutely beautiful. And as for the design of the creature itself, how PG do I have to keep things? I forgot to ask.
Oh, not at all.
Like
what is this PG you speak of?
I'm not saying this in a bad way, just to be clear. I thought the entire design was great, but wasn't there something like vaguely genital about that thing?
Oh yeah.
Am I crazy, or did other people also look at it properly emerge and go, "That's a penis"?
Well, I mean, I'm a perv, so maybe my mind just goes there. But no, it definitely.
I can't tell if I'm a perv or it just had that sort of vibe about it. One or the other for sure.
I definitely felt it did. Yeah. And I mean, it's violating bodies. Like, I mean, English majors. I was
going to say it would make sense if that was kind of deliberate in a subtle way. Yeah, it would totally make sense.
And I feel like English majors were just taught to be prepared for penises and things to put them in anything we look at or read. So
probably that's our one skill set. Listen,
that was my freshman English teacher.
It's better to be really good at one thing at least than nothing at all.
To clarify, I'm only good at recognizing it, not necessarily. You know what? I've gone too far. But
I'm so sorry I took us down this path.
No. Yeah, I love this transition between the bodies. Everything about it is creepy, and the tension builds nonstop. But also, it's fascinating to me what's still going on with the bodies, like you said, like how the legs move. And all I could think about, Don, was the sunken place. Like you'd still be in there somewhere. Yeah. So I don't know. I didn't know if you guys got that vibe too, but I was totally wondering like what's going on with the guy who used to be him, you know?
Absolutely. But I mean, that last tear that Joe Allen sheds, that could have been really cheesy, and it wasn't. Like, I was fully with them. I took that so seriously, and that was such a brutal and painful moment where he's finally free of this thing, and just that's it. There's one last tear that can come out of his body. And it's amazing how that didn't end up coming off cheesy at all to me.
No.
Like, I was so invested in that poor guy by then.
Well, that and they didn't stay on it too long. It was kind of an indication of is there still a piece of him in there or not?
Yeah.
Even though the traveler says like, oh, you know, he's still conscious. He can hear everything. I can talk to him. I could do this. But that's a big difference than, you know, you're here on a subatomic level. You know, exactly how much of you still survives as opposed to just your consciousness.
There's no guarantee of anything. Even that tear can very easily have just been one of the body's last reflexes, you know, just the organs behaving the way that they do without the person being attached to them. So there is no actual guarantee. We're not bludgeoned over the head with this guy and his suffering. The traveler could be lying for all we know about the fact that he's actually been there and witnessing all of this.
Yeah, I mean, that could be a total fear, you know, just like a threat, basically. Like, oh, this is what's going to happen to you, whether it is or not.
Yeah, we can't know that for sure. And I thought it was fun because I thought it was going to go in that direction where he actively like gets some sort of nourishment from fear, because that would be a horror movie classic theme. Oh, yeah. And I love that it didn't end up going in that direction. And then I thought about it because it made me sort of think creatively. Why would it want you to be afraid and know if it's not for that reason? And I thought, okay, what about maybe the very practical reason that if it's doing this, if it's about to get into somebody's body, if it's about to take a new body, obviously that's a vulnerable moment. Obviously, the more afraid people are around that situation, the less they're going to be able to be coherent and form a good plan and react properly and have quick reactions. Like, fear genuinely deeply affects our ability to make decisions and be rational. And maybe it's just as simple as that. You know, it wants people to be afraid because they're not going to be as efficient at fighting back if they're that afraid.
Right.
I like that. Yeah. And I was also thinking like fear raises your blood pressure and it raises like, you know, everything inside of you is moving more. So if he's trying to get to a more healthy blood, because he talks about how this body he's in, it's like a low level, he's running low on fuel. So maybe like hyping you up and getting your blood pressure up helps that somehow too. But I like yours better than that.
Well, I mean, it could be both things. Could also be just pumping more blood to the new quote unquote organ, because it's basically going to take the role of becoming a new organ in the body. It's going to need all sorts of connections to everything. So maybe that too. I love how we're speculating on this like weird genital alien parasite and whether or not blood pressure makes a more inviting home for it. Like, kudos, writers. You are making us have conversations that our parents did not envision us having.
Man, I'm trying to picture what my mom's reaction to that would be. Anyway, so then you get the reveal where it gets into his body and it's like cancer, you know, like, and I thought that was a really cool thing to do because it's kind of distracted and thinks that's the big problem when there's something much worse about to come for it, you know?
Yeah. That whole scene of the inside of the body was super interesting too. It's not that sort of like visceral, slimy, gooey thing you expect in horror movies. It was much brighter and more zappy. It was like more focused on electrical impulses and everything else. And I wonder if that's a continuation of the theme of how we are not necessarily so much our bodies as we are our thoughts, and the way our neurons fire electricity at each other.
I hadn't even considered that. I like that. Man. You're making me think too deep, Alex.
It's that kind of writing that by the time we're done with this episode, we're gonna be like, you know what? Screw you and screw your script and just screw all of you. Stop. Stop being so good.
You're trying to make this my favorite episode. That's all that's happening here.
Whenever we talk about an episode, that episode becomes my favorite episode that day. It's amazing. Like, this process does something. It's magic. I can't wait to see if that's still going to apply to the middle two episodes.
The Lovecraftian ones?
Yeah, I can't wait to see if that's going to happen there too.
I hope it does. That's the whole point of this show,
Absolutely. I would love it if that happens.
Even the movies I didn't want to cover or I didn't like I've always left these conversations with a new respect for them. There's never been a single time that I've been like, oh, it's even shittier than I thought it was. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I feel like hearing you say that makes me happy, because that's literally the point of this. It's never so much these are the movies we love or the shows we love. It's about the conversation, and it's about thinking more deeply and just finding something that you may not even know was there, or being able to discuss it in a different way. Yeah.
I don't need to love every episode. I don't need to love every movie to respect it and to find great things to love about it. Absolutely.
Yep. There you go.
Having said that, if there ever is a movie where you go in thinking, I think this is a piece of garbage, and then you leave thinking, wow, that's even worse than I was anticipating, that deserves an award. Like, that, genuinely, we need to drop a certificate for that, because that's special too.
When you swing far enough the other way, it becomes interesting again.
Yeah, right? Like, you gotta try pretty hard for people to be looking deeply at you and realize it's even worse than they first imagined. That's so cool. I hope we do find one eventually.
If not, gotta write it.
Challenge accepted.
Oh boy.
We talk about the berating that Carl has for the traveler, but there's also that moment where he kind of plays with his ego, where he says, oh, well, you forgot something. Yeah. It's like, oh, and you see how I guess to an extent, how pompous and how arrogant the traveler is. He's like, oh, no, oh, never mind. You don't need to know. It's okay. It's perfectly fine. You don't need to know. And then when they're having that conversation along the quote unquote eighth cranial nerve, I love how he points out, it's like, yeah, you forgot something. I was recording the whole conversation. The tape's probably run out by now, but it included what you said. Like, it could hear you.
Yeah.
And again, it was a great way to kind of show that the hero of this story gets the last laugh. I mean, it's not simply sorry to spoil this movie for anybody, but it's not like oh my gosh, now I forgot the name of the movie. With Denzel Washington, where there's this spirit, that's this demon that's going into different living species, fallen, where he attempts to kill himself so he can kill whatever the thing is, and then you just kind of left with, oh my gosh, maybe it survived, it possibly made it. Here it's kind of like, no, I'm going to let you know that you're not going to survive. You're not going to make it. In the same sense that I was told I'm dying in 6 months, I'm telling you, you're about to die right now.
Yeah.
So I'm dealing with it the way I'm dealing with it. You're going to have to deal with it the way you're dealing with it, which is very clear.
It's not going to be as graceful as mine, for sure.
Exactly. It's not handled with grace. He's basically pleading at that moment. It's like, oh shit, I got to get out of here.
I guess the most horrifying thing for me out of this entire episode and the ending is that poor sheriff coming back in the morning to find what he found. Can you imagine being that poor guy, though? Like, out of everybody in this film, that's who my heart goes out to. That poor sheriff walks in there that morning, and this guy his friend is dead on the floor with blood scribbled on it, with his eyes gouged out and his throat slit, and all of these corpses around him, and this other corpse on the table that's all, opened up, and there's writing in blood on his chest. Like, that poor guy, if he wasn't sure he was cursed before, he definitely thinks he's special now.
Because he wouldn't know who did it, right? I mean, until he listens to the tape. But even listening to the tape, it's not going to be clear. Like, hey, Nate, I'm going to kill myself and trap this alien. It's still going to be because I didn't think about it until you just brought it up. Like, he doesn't know what happened, and he's not going to know because again, the tape cut out.
Yeah.
You're seeing your buddy, so you might be thinking, I mean, last thing you're going to think is like, oh, he went in and killed himself. You'd be thinking like somebody else did this shit.
Definitely. That would be my first thought too. Yeah.
I would devote my life to finding the killer.
He's going to piece some stuff together for sure from the tape, and he's going to figure some stuff out. And he seemed like a very bright guy, but still there's going to be that initial moment of, oh yeah, I am definitely cursed. That's it. I am retiring right now. I'm never doing this again. I'm going to go and, retreat to a monastery. Like, that poor guy.
I don't know. It almost feels like kind of funny to me in a way, because you would walk in and see this horrible thing that happened to your friend. And like you said, the eyes are gouged out and there's blood everywhere and the body's ripped open. And your immediate response is, man, I'm so cursed.
I'm so cursed.
That's really funny to me.
Okay, maybe that's just me.
No, that's me, 100%.
My first thought would be, definitely cursed. You know what? Not only am
I got to clean all this shit up.
God heard me say that I'm cursed, and he extra cursed me just for the hubris that I had to out him as having cursed me. Just to punish me for saying that, he double cursed me. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's me 100%. That would be me. Just, oh, great. I got to clean this up. I'm so cursed.
No, that's when he realizes, like, I got deputies to do this.
There is something a little amusing about that ending, if you think about it, even in the context of this poor man, because it's that contrast between the fact that we know this was a triumph. Like, we know for sure this was a triumph. This was a glorious moment of, this folk hero winning against all odds and doing something incredible, and doing it with the more calm and, cold blood than I have just going to the dentist on a Tuesday, right? We know that this was an absolute glorious moment of triumph. It's just that this poor sheriff doesn't know that yet.
Mm-hmm.
I think that contrast is what makes it feel slightly amusing. Like, we're allowed to giggle about it a little bit.
I like that. That's I don't know. That almost hits the funny thing I'm looking for, right? So
right? There you go.
I might have to raise it a little bit, but it still doesn't get to be my favorite yet. I will say I think this is the strongest story. I really do kind of wish this was a full movie. I know we're close to it. I don't know the exact runtime, but I don't know. There's I guess at the same time, though, I wouldn't know what else to add to, so maybe it's perfect the way it is. But
yeah, maybe it is. Although when I get into the mood of something like this, they could have just kept me in that autopsy scene for another extra half an hour easily, with just him chatting and listening to his weird music and talking into the recorder and vaguely strange things happening around him. And that would have been perfect for me for another half hour. I'm good. I don't need much.
I had one complaint, and it's solely me. It's 100% me. It's not the writers. It's not anything else. It comes from reading spoilers, right? So I knew about the alien. So as soon as he introduced himself as Joe Allen, I was like, Allen is way too close to alien, and I was annoyed.
Yeah.
I didn't even think of that. I literally did not make that connection at all. That's incredible.
I was like, why didn't you make your name Aline? Or
Look, he's just your average Joe, the alien.
The alien.
Right.
Oh gosh, that's terrible.
But then going the exact opposite way, the 8th cranial nerve is the one that goes to sight and sound. And I love that that he spoke about it in the way that an autopsy doctor would, instead of telling us what it is. He didn't say, oh, these two senses. He just says the 8th cranial nerve, and you either know what it is or you don't, or whatever. And I thought that was or you Google it. Absolutely. But I just thought it was so good because that's what he takes out. He takes out his sight, his hearing, I don't know. I loved that it's there, but it's not. So he could say it without tipping us off where it's definitely going either.
Right.
I love that we've improved the ranking of this episode for you. And now, in gratitude, by pointing out the Alan alien thing, you've completely ruined it for me forever. I'm never going to be able to unsee that. It's so terrible.
It still only gets to be one of my top 3 right now, and I've only seen 4. But that is not a shot at it in any way. That's not saying it's not good. It's that all of these have been consistently wonderful so far.
Right.
No, they're all fantastic, absolutely. And whichever ones I'm not as huge a fan of, I usually know that it's because it's not my specific thing. There's going to be some of them that hit me harder and others that don't. And that's totally normal. The next one we're going to do, I'm not saying it's my favorite or anything, but it is definitely one of the ones that's customized to make me leave with like full body nausea. So that's going to be really fun.
Oh, man. Okay. It is my favorite, as I said, but I'm actually looking forward to Pickman's Model, the 5th one, solely because I'm a giant Crispin Glover fan, so I can't wait to see it.
Oh, I'm so sorry for what you're about to witness. I am so sorry.
It's fine. I'll put on Willard and I'll recover. But
oh my God.
We're here for you. Just know we're here for you. If you're going to need to talk about it, we are here for you. Good. I think we've thoroughly autopsied this episode.
Excellent. Well, don't sew it up. Just leave it open for somebody else to find. This concludes another episode of the Necronama.com. Join us next time when we look at Cabinet of Curiosities, Episode 4, The Outside.